right. I'd like to call to order the May 1st, 2024 Citizens Advisory Committee. Can we have roll call, please?
Committee Member Knight.
Present.
Committee Member Coaster.
Kester, yes.
Coaster, I apologize.
No worries.
Chair Harrington.
Present.
Vice Chair Minkoff.
Here.
Committee Member Abling.
Here.
Committee Member Terrell.
Here.
Committee Member Barney.
Here.
Committee Member Castile White.
Here.
Committee Member Rizzo.
Here.
Committee Member Stephenson.
Here. Great. Should we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I'd like to open it up to public comment on any non-agenda items. Nobody here in the room. Anybody on Zoom?
And Paul is,
Paul, did you come off mute? Nope. All right. Seeing nobody for public comment, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 3, review and approval of our minutes. And last meeting, we tabled the March minutes, and those got sent out shortly after our last meeting. So did you guys have a chance to look at those? Any changes? Are we prepared to move forward?
I'm good with those.
Mm-hmm.
I move we approve the minutes of March 6th.
Second.
Thank you. All right. Everybody approve, yay?
Yay.
Aye.
Yes. Aye.
All right. Anybody disapprove? No. All right. Moving on to our April meeting minutes. Those are in our packets here.
I saw this guy.
I can do it online.
I'm sure.
It's very small, but I just, write on number 1, the comma should be after Castile before my name, because it's not Diane Castile Shelby and Stephenson, so only one thing I noticed.
All right, thank you. And then Victoria.
And I should be marked excused for that meeting.
Okay. So Victoria was excused.
And then my last name has 2 L's in
Let me fix those.
Yeah, these were brought to our attention, so these, so there is an updated, I'll email out.
Oh,
Sorry,
Oh,
so
we
there's
must
a
have
couple
missed
of, actually, thank you to Paul Wilcox, he sent over a couple of edits, and these are all for them, right? So,
okay.
so I can actually go through those comments. Paul, is that all right with you?
Yeah, that's fine, Dakota.
All right, I'm just gonna go through, so these are the edits that we have made, thanks to Paul submitting some comments earlier for the April minutes. Delete the comma between vice chair and Kevin Minkoff. Correct Terrell to add the additional L. Insert comma after Castillo before Shelby. delete comma between Shelby and Stephenson, and then also, those that were present were, Chair Charlotte Harrington, Vice Chair, Kevin Minkoff, Adrian Kester, Chris Barney, Diane Castillo, Shelby Stephenson, Woodrow Terrell, Will Knight, and then also just a small little spelling error in the last name, Stephenson, changing the O. Or sorry, sorry. So those are all.
Oh, it
on
went-
the- so those-
It's spelled right here, so, okay.
Right. So should we get can we get a motion to accept with the proposed changes?
Make a motion that we accept the April 3rd, 2024 meeting minutes with the changes added.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Perfect. So. Oops. Thank you. I see a hand there.
I would say that my vote is opposed to that. Not that it changes anything, but I just want to state that.
I couldn't understand him.
He said
Chris,
it's
can
opposed.
it was difficult to hear you. Can you say that one more time?
I know it's not going to change anything, but I wanted to state that on those minutes, my vote is nay.
Why?
Is that for both March and April, or just April?
Looks like right now it's just for April because I don't have the March ones in front of me. So I don't really have an opinion on the March ones other than anything I may have said in the previous meeting.
I don't understand why. I don't, can you clarify why the nay vote?
Well, it's still kind of the same thing I said last time. I mean, these are like summarizations of what people said and that kind of thing.
I can answer that if you'd like. The reason why these are is we're required to summarize rather than have word for word minutes. So that's what we are providing, as we do not have a transcriber on staff. And Chris Ann has been nice enough to start doing minutes for Planning Commission and CAC. Is there anything else that you do, or just those two? And a transcriber is basically a full-time job for these, to do word for word and minute by minute. So we're required by state to have minutes as a summarized version. So these will all be summarized until we get a software that AI can summarize for us, or transcribe the meetings. That's still in the works. We have not heard back from City Hall where that will be going. So Kevin has a question.
This is-
Perfect. Kevin?
This is Kevin. Yes, thank you. I would vote to not get a full transcript of every meeting as part of the minutes of the meeting. We could get, maybe they could send out a PDF copy of the transcribed minutes, but I say that what we've received as far as a summary of discussion points is perfect, is what I would expect to see in meeting minutes, not a complete transcription of every word. That would be overkill, particularly because the meetings are already recorded and those recordings are available for review anyway. So I'm going to say that I like the meeting minutes as they've been presented.
Thank you. Right. Yes, Will.
If I could just comment on that, Dakota, if you are part of that discussion regarding the minutes and the AI and all that, I found it very helpful and nice to have the recorded video uploaded to YouTube. So if that process could remain, that would be, I think, beneficial to the community to be able to actually tease out what was said versus the overall summarization from an AI sort of thing.
That will continue.
Excellent.
Regardless. We haven't heard about it since, I think it was like November or so. It was the last time we had kind of a demonstration from software that the city was contemplating maybe moving to. And that would have had the minutes, or the video definitely stays, because that is the truest form of minutes that you can get, as Vice Chairman Cobb had mentioned. And then there would just be kind of a transcription. Some of the services, as we're speaking, it kind of transcribes on the side, and when you watch the video, you would see that as well. But again, not sure if we're going to be getting that. I think it's something we're trying to, because as many of you know, we haven't had minutes in quite some time, so now we're trying to get back into it. And so I guess what we're going to try to. But yes, that is part of our requirements to have the recording uploaded.
Thank you.
And then Kevin, I see your hands up.
Oh, I just didn't put it down. I'm sorry.
Okay. Nothing else on that topic? Right, we're going to go ahead and move on to our agenda item number 4, and that is looking at our committee role. And we have in our packets here, Adrian, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what you submitted and kind of introduce that?
I can absolutely do that. So the homework I was given as of the last meeting was to kind of take an initial stab at updating the ordinance language defining the CAC. So I did that. What you have in the packet is two things. One is a slightly altered text of the existing language. And as I noted in what I submitted, the alterations that I made are for clarity and formatting only. Because I would not be surprised if some people who read the actual language just sort of cringe every time they do. So that's there for comparison's sake. And then I included a draft language of what I was kind of thinking based on the discussions we had in previous meetings. My goal here was to try to capture all or most of the things that we had discussed as our priorities, and to offer some clarification, but without getting too nitpicky and pedantic with the language. I mean, not necessarily defining what we do to the absolute letter, but adding some things that give us accountability points and measurement points throughout the year as far as what we do with essentially our main focuses, which as I saw it was managing the citizen involvement program, that Goal 1 CIP, as well as being kind of the focal point for commentary and issues that come in from the citizenry. So those two things were largely the highlight points of what drove the language that I added. So I don't know if we want to sort of read through it, or if anybody, because I know everybody's, I think, has seen it at this point. Or we can just sort of dive into individual comments and questions.
Do you guys think it would be helpful to read it out loud to kind of refresh, or just kind of jump into discussion?
kinda wanna see side by side, just, you know, cause right now it's like front and back page, so I'm with my eyes bulge out.
So is the first one here, where you just kind of simplified the language?
Basically, all I did was, in that first page was sort of bulletized some of the sections.
Okay,
And also, wherever, citizens advisory or citizen involvement, I did acronyms for the rest of those, just because I got tired of typing Citizens Advisory Committee. But beyond that, beyond those two little things, the language is what is currently written.
okay. So I guess maybe what we could do is kind of just walk through it here, and see if there's any feedback or thoughts or changes. Oh, yes, Victoria.
On C, about the representation, we should give consideration to geographical distribution of its membership. Seen as even city council doesn't have that, and the whole interview committee.
That's actually in the original language. I didn't change that. But that's actually in the original charter, so I didn't touch. It's a good idea if we could, but as we all know, in practical terms, we'd have to have a larger volunteer pool to really make that work. So, but yeah, I didn't change that language. It might have moved a little bit in the order.
In our charter now.
Yeah, it is.
Is it in our charter or in the Oregon charter?
No, it's in, that language is in the ordinance, for the CAC.
Our CAC.
Our CAC, yeah.
We might have to
Yeah, it's in point C of the original language. It says, although representation is not based on geographical districts, when appointments are made, consideration shall be given to the geographical distribution of its membership. So, yeah, that I didn't touch. It's a good thought, but we know better.
It would be interesting to do.
Now,
Put a little dot on the map to see where.
that does bring a thought that came to me sort of after I submitted all of this, and this might be a question for Dakota and Chris Ann, is there a directory or register of all of the either neighborhood or homeowners associations within the city?
I believe with City Hall, there is, we do not have one in place.
Because
Venture Portland used to be an organization of all the neighborhood associations. If Venture Portland is still in existence, then yeah, absolutely, there is a list of all the neighborhood associations.
Yeah, the only reason I bring it up is because in reading through the various documents about citizen involvement, for a lot of cities, the major touch point between city committees and city hall and the citizenry is not actually individuals most of the time, it's neighborhood associations. In fact, the U of O article in a couple places encourages the groups in charge of the citizen involvement program to essentially go out and help set up neighborhood associations to encourage that kind of two-way flow. I'm not necessarily suggesting we do that, but if there are HOAs or neighborhood associations already in existence in the city, if we want to reach more people, having those groups be touch points might not be a terrible idea. I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are on that.
I just want to clarify, Kevin, did you say Adventure Portland is the name of that?
No, it's Venture Portland.
Thank you.
One of the big things that I tried to add here, as part of the citizen involvement thing, particularly around goal 1, was having a structured touch points for us as a group to gather information from the various other citizen committees within the city, and then also have a touch point where we report to city council as far as how is citizen involvement going. So having a little bit of organization around that was one of the big things I definitely wanted to have language around. I'm curious to hear people's thoughts on that.
Yes, Victoria?
We have a good representation right here of most of the committees. I think every committee is represented by someone here that's on another committee.
Yeah, and you'll note that I did actually add a bullet point on that, basically in just below as part of the review, we meet with other committees. The next bullet point down is appointed members of the CAC that also serve on another committee can fill that role. So I thought of exactly that.
Yeah. 'Cause I know Diane's on historical.
Historical Society, not on the landmark.
I'm
I'm a board member, but the town center.
Yep, because within the group, this committee, we have representatives from, I know from Parks and PSEC and Planning and Historical Landmarks and TCAB, which I think has everybody covered. Did I miss any? I think the only other committee that's out there is budget. That's not really a citizen committee.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
Or,
There's citizens on it.
Yeah.
So I wonder when we're looking through this, are there changes in here that we see that would be different from what we're doing now? And do we feel that any of those changes would be maybe seen as scope creep or anything like that? Or do you think people would be open to some of the changes in role in this document?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, I was just, as we're looking through this document to our current role now, looking for anything that would be different out of our current role, and if those changes might be interpreted as us, scope creeping is probably the wrong term, but we say that a lot in my 9 to 5, and how those might be interpreted by other groups. I was looking at the one that was the Planning Commission, and I'm feeling like in our current role, that hasn't really been within the purview, so would that be one of the changes? Or do you guys feel like that we have partnered with them?
If I could comment real quick on that, one of the addition of the language with regards to the planning commission was very intentional. And that is mostly because the vast majority of the language that we've looked at through, I mean, just the raw text of Goal 1, as well as all of the stuff from the U of O paper, was very much focused on land use policy. And one of the other things that was highlighted in the U of O document is that it's critically important to have citizen involvement and the communication of policies be done as early in that process as humanly possible. Because if you're just doing it at essentially the review stage at the end, that's almost too late. And it's too late for the citizenry writ large to really make a whole lot of exert a whole lot of influence on what planning policy is. So the goal there was to try to assist in the communication both ways of planning policy, the planning process, and changes thereof earlier in almost in the definition stage of policy, of land use policies, to try to get that information out to the general public and clarify changes and make changes known much earlier. Because right now, that's kind of not happening. I mean, we're making every effort to publicize and put out on the website hearings that come up and applications that come in, but we're not really highlighting the changes that are being made to things like definitions and use policies that are decisions that are happening in front of planning right now, if that makes any sense. So, but back to your, I just wanted to kind of give some background on where my thought process was.
Yeah, thank you.
I was gonna say, I think some of the things though that, you're on the planning commission, aren't you?
I am not.
You're not.
I show up to them frequently, but I am not actually on that
Also,
committee.
maybe Kevin.
Kevin is.
Kevin is. It's just that I think that, I've heard, it sounds like they're doing a lot of things that are being forced on us by the state.
Well,
So, and that's not something the citizens can come in and
no,
say, but.
that's true. That's very true. But part of that two-way communication that we're trying to foster here, some of that is communicating to the general public, to the citizenry, the extent to which our hands are tied. So if, say, something goes in that, to use a nice hot button example, changes are made to parking ordinances. Nobody likes those changes. Nobody is happy with the way those decisions are being made. Part of the communication back to the public then needs to be why. Why couldn't we do what we know the citizens actually want because our hands are tied?
So I would agree that I guess we need to communicate that better so the public knows that, you're right.
Yeah.
So,
Shelby,
yes,
can I ask that you pull a microphone closer to you? It's-
I'm too
I
talk.
think you have a cold or something because it's hard to hear. You're speaking very softly.
I just guess I speak softly is probably the problem, so sorry.
Carrie, where's your big stick?
Yeah, so I was just saying that I'm trying to remember to talk loud. Okay, I was thinking that the planning commission is faced with making some changes that are mandated by the state. And there's been round after round, I've heard about these things. So that's why I think that it's very frustrating. I just don't think the public knows how many of these things just happen, and it's not what we want in our community, but we are forced to do these things. So that's what I was saying, and Adrian was saying maybe the communication needs to be better explained to the citizenry that this is happening, it's not what we want.
Well, it absolutely needs to be better. You're spot on, Shelby. When I brought up to the Planning Commission what we were doing in the CAC, revising this mission statement, if you will, it says so in the minutes, they were surprised. I'll reiterate that. The CAC is not on the Planning Commission's radar, and it absolutely must be. It must be on the CIP radar. Do I have that correct? That acronym? Yeah, the CIP is currently made up of city councilors. I would like to propose to city council that they divest themselves of the CIP and make that a separate group. It doesn't have to be the CAC, it can be a separate entity. But in any case, what I think one of the goals of what we're going through right now with the CAC is to also put a statement out that we then issue this statement to city council and to the planning commission that says you must issue these regulations and decision-making topics to the CAC, because the CAC is responsible for reviewing them. Not as a side thought, sidebar, but as part of the process. And then the CAC, I believe, or at least in conjunction with the CIP, should be disseminating that information to the public and gathering public input to then take into consideration with the CAC's review of these topics to then go back to the Planning Commission. When I read what Adrian put together, and a lot of it comes from already proscribed procedures, the very first part of this is the CAC shall review all legislative amendments to the city's comprehensive plan and all major amendments to land use regulations. I don't know, I would wonder about not reviewed by any other council sanctioned citizen committee. Well, you know what'll happen is the council will then put a lot of these regulation amendments to the CIP, which is themselves. And then they'll say, no, the CAC doesn't need to review them because that is, you know, I see you're shaking your head, Adrian, but I'm wondering, it says not reviewed by any other council sanctioned citizen committee. Well, the CIP is a council sanctioned citizen committee. And I believe, that's why I believe there's a conflict of interest with the city councilors being the only members of the CIP. Then they can review everything and cut the CAC out.
The first thing I would say, Kevin, is I think you're reading the language that's defining the city council as the CIP a little incorrectly. Because the language that is that definition for the CIP as far as city council goes is, as far as I'm able to read it, simply one of oversight. And it exists in our definition, and today is the Citizens Advisory Committee is the primary element of the city's citizen involvement program. Full stop. So I think your concern there is probably unwarranted.
Well, I beg to differ because it says so directly in the materials that we were reading previously. It says the CIP is made up of city council members. It says it just exactly like that.
Where?
So we have a CIP where?
Yeah.
I will find it. I will find it and I will read it. You go ahead and continue. I'll look it up.
I think this, Shelby, I think that we have to, I understand, we want citizen involvement, and I'm not trying to hinder that, but the planning commission has deadlines, they have stuff, and they probably pretty much try to turn things around. We can't get involved interfering in that whole process.
Exactly, and that's sort of why I was going in the direction that I was sort of alluding to earlier, where getting involved much earlier in the planning process, at the definition stage, not in the enforcement stage, not in the approval stage, but in the definition stage of land use policy. That's really where the key needs to be, and where I think the communication right now to the citizenry is sorely lacking. Because as you say, Shelby, when you get into when applications are submitted and when appeals happen and when that whole there's timelines associated with that simply can't be interfered with, and because those are mandated by higher powers than us, and at that point it's largely too late anyway. The rules are what the rules are. But the real communication points are well before that, when the policies are defined, and then immediately after that, when you're trying to communicate to the general public why.
I would agree that part of it. I just think they've got deadlines, so we can't.
Yeah.
We
And
can't
that's
interfere.
and that's why the focus is, in the language, as far as reviewing of land use issues and stuff, where it talks about things like legislative amendments, of which, as far as I know, and Dakota can kind of keep me honest here, legislative amendments in city terms means some very specific things. And there's not that many of those. Because a lot of the stuff that planning commission does is the whole quasi judicial thing, and then there's the legislative stuff, and those are the things, and I think that gets towards the much earlier in the process where you're defining the policy. And do we want to be involved when planning commission is going through the slow process of changing definitions of, say, what is a school? Things like that. Because I know that was a question that came up in a whole series of hearings. Does CAC want some, and does the citizenry want some input on that? Probably. And that's not something that's terribly time dependent. But it's those kinds of things that I think would be good, and what I was shooting for as far as the language goes, as far as offering some review. Because do we need to be involved in any sort of like application review? Unless it's like a really hot topic for the citizenry writ large, probably not.
And then Kevin, see your hands up.
Yes. Okay, well, I found it. It's not exactly the CIP. What they talk about is the CCI. the Committee for Citizen Involvement is defined by Troutdale under Troutdale's Citizens Advisory Committee definition. And it says that the Troutdale City Council serves as the Committee for Citizen Involvement, CCI, which is responsible for evaluating the performance of the CAC and the city's overall citizen involvement program. Now, the CCI is what is defined here in this section that says the Planning Commission, let's see, the CAC shall review all legislative amendments to the city's comprehensive plan and all major amendments to land use regulations not reviewed by any other council-sanctioned citizen committee. Council-sanctioned citizen committee is the CCI. And if the CCI takes up any or all of these land use regulations, then the CAC, according to this document that you put together, Adrian, would not review any of those because they've already been reviewed by another council-sanctioned citizen committee.
Yeah, I'm sorry to possibly cut you off there, but I guess from exactly what you read, the important part of that text is not the acronym itself, it's not the name, but it's the sentence that follows that. It's the fact that that committee is responsible for checking the performance of the citizen involvement program and the CAC. So, like I said earlier, that job for the city council is strictly one of oversight. And as such, that's why there's the bullet point in the text that I added where there would be an annual report from the CAC, basically reporting back to city council saying, how is the citizen involvement program doing? That would fill that whole definition of everything that you read off there. So I
think that it would be, all I'd like to do with this discussion, my point is to make the CAC's role definitive. That is to say, the CAC shall do X, Y, Z. The CAC is responsible for X, Y, Z. Rather than, so all I'm suggesting is that we strike that statement that says, the CAC shall review all legislative amendments to the city's comprehensive plan and all major amendments to land use regulations, period.
Yeah, I don't think we want to go there because there's a lot of, because we have multiple citizen committees, we do not necessarily, we do not want to duplicate work. Because by definition, every committee that the city has is a citizen committee. That would, not including that text, striking that text would result, I think, would result in the duplication of a heck of a lot of work, and I don't think we want to go there.
Well, then I think we are right back to where we started. And where we started was, will be a committee that just responds to the city council or the planning commission whenever they want to ask our advice or assign us to review something, then we'll go ahead and review it. That's exactly where we were to begin with. And this whole discussion was brought about by the fact that everybody started to say, no, that's not just the CAC's role. So here we are. This is where I'm having a difficulty with this whole process, only because I'm trying to get some definition, some definitive responsibilities of the CAC. Is it to simply be a sounding board for the planning commission and the city council? Are we going to just resolve issues that they bring to us? Are we going to bring new issues to them? And when does that happen? When does that occur? What are the guidelines that tell us that certain things we can go out on our own? Remember, that was part of the beginning discussion is, do we bring new issues to city council? And the first comment was no. And then Ray came in and spoke to us and said, oh, no, you're supposed to. You're supposed to go out and seek citizen involvement and bring new issues. But when? When the city says, okay, go ahead and review that? Or when some other committee has not been discussing it? And how do we know if they've not been or have been discussing these other issues?
I'm gonna go ahead and give the
Well,
to Will so he can join in the conversation.
sorry to interrupt you guys. I guess on the first part, with us bringing stuff to council, I'm not sure if that was in there. I thought I could maybe read that there was something in there where there was a function to be able to.
The second major bullet point under A is basically that whole bit is exactly that, is the CAC acting as a liaison. So, I mean, that line says CAC will act as a liaison between neighborhoods, interest groups, and individual citizens and, I can't type, the city's elected and appointed officials. And then the sub-bullet points expand on that.
Great, thank you for clarifying that. Secondly, I feel like I'm kind of shading more towards the not having to look at every application. Like, I don't think that that's our role. I don't necessarily would want us to have to sit through basically doing planning commission. I think if we wanted to be planning commission, we should go and do that. I like the idea of the individual groups that, as they're currently set up, allowing them to be that channel for people to go and discuss those specific topics happening. But then the language as I'm reading it from you, Adrian, we would still perform the function as it's currently written, which is to look at all legislative amendments to the city's comprehensive plan, all major amendments to land use regulations, and that is actually still, that's copied word for word.
Absolutely, yes.
So it'd still be performing that function to where I believe, maybe we haven't done it in the past couple of years, but when there is the big comprehensive review and it's like, okay, we're gonna pick goal 7 and we're gonna dive into that, and then staff and whoever gets together, they work on it, and then they bring us the recommended updates, and then we sit down and go through those line by line and give our feedback, which then may or may not go into the report. And I think one of the more recent times it wasn't necessarily that, but an opportunity for us to do that was with the transportation plan. And we went in and we struck a bunch, we talked about the bridge, you know, we had our ability to give our input, and it was received and it was included, even though we had to protest a little bit to get some things included at the end there when they were trying to wrap it up. But I feel like that maybe should be more of our role rather than diving into every application or whatnot. I do like the idea of, I guess overall, this group taking on the specific function that seems to be missing from the state rules or laws, as well as what we read in the U of O paper and so on, and that is who watches our communication and who takes a look and puts it up there and says, is this good enough, or are we doing well, are we doing poor? Who's looking at metrics of, like it's stated in there, bringing in other technical information, like that for me is like, how many hits on the website, how many posts did we do this month or this year? What is this outreach looking like? Are we trending up? Are we stagnant, or are we trending down in our communication and feedback? And then the idea of reviewing the planning process and seeing what that looks like and through that lens of communication that we're trying to kind of attach to this group, is our planning process meeting those needs, or should we make recommendations? I guess, maybe that's where I'd like to see us focus, is to boil that down.
Yep.
Keep the main stuff we have been looking at, but really focus on reviewing and improving involvement.
Yep. And one,
And then, of course, making sure that we
Yeah.
have that very clear, if we need to rewrite it, that we can bring issues to planning commission or city council or whatnot.
yeah, one thing I want to highlight very specifically in the language, so the sections that basically say, the review section, that's pretty, as Will said, is pretty much word for word, unchanged, but the two parts of point B that I did make a point to change was kind of the first sub-bullet point there, basically saying we periodically review the planning process writ large and kind of at a high level, with a focus on improving communication and involvement. And then the third one that basically said that review of legislative amendments or other stuff that is, whatever, can be initiated by entities X, Y, and Z. I mean, it can be somebody from staff says, this is something that is of sufficient interest that would be good in front of the CAC. Or council can say, this is something that's of sufficient public interest that needs to go to the CAC. Or we as a group, by consensus, can say, we heard about this thing, this policy change, we can ask to have some input on that. And obviously that's not a trigger we're going to do frequently, because we don't want to look at everything, because we don't need to duplicate work. And we trust our compatriots on the other committees. But because our focus is on citizen involvement and our role as the liaison with the rest of the citizenry, that language was kind of, that's where that language structure came from.
One thing that calls out to me, talking through that, and this is I always jump to the action items, so I have to come back to process, is that something as simple as maybe including those planning commission meeting minutes with ours. We could kind of look through and see if there might be anything in particular citizens that we thought we may want to get more involvement or input on, something like that, so.
Sometimes, and at least this is my own observation, more often than not, I get those kinds of, aside from the planning commission meetings that I just attend as a citizen, but I get a lot of that information from staff communications at the end of our own meetings. So, and you guys are very good about sort of keeping us in the loop as far as if there's major things happening. But there might be a time where something that staff in passing alerts us to, and it starts pricking up committee members' ears saying, we might want to have a word on that. So that's sort of where that thought process was going.
What other discussion do we have on this? Are you guys feeling like we want to take this and maybe draft it a little bit more and come back with our ideas next time? Do we feel like we need a subgroup to work out some of these details, or what are your thoughts?
At some point, I'm sure that the city attorney is gonna need to look at it and make sure it, is written and formatted correctly and however. And then it would also be interesting to get the legal opinion of that person or whomever as to, does this, what things right off the bat are, okay, this is no longer yours, you realize that, okay, this is what you're adding, you know, and really just like, okay, here's the legal thing that we're changing now by doing this, because there may be some of these things that I'm not seeing from my lens that may be bigger issues outside of what we're seeing. And that would just, it would just be nice to pull somebody in on that and get their opinion as well.
So this is actually probably partially a question for staff, is say that just for argument's sake, that we decide this is the language we want to go with, and I know it's not, but say for argument's sake that it is. Does Ed do a review of ordinance language before it goes in front of council, or how does that work?
I can't speak to that fully, I'm not 100% sure. I don't believe he reviews every ordinance that goes in front of council. I think for something similar to, like, for example, I'm more used to doing development code rather than municipal code changes, so some municipal code he might do a review on that. I know typically I send all of my development code ordinances off to Ray, and Ray reviews them and checks to see if there's any changes in the language. The first couple I did with the city, I did have Ed review to make sure. So that's something I just have to double check, and I'd have to ask if he reviews all of them. I'm not sure if Ray sends them off or not for the ordinances.
I would just sort of, to answer Will's question, I was sort of curious as to what the process was.
For something for a community code update like this would be, I would assume so, but again, I'm not entirely sure. I know, I'm sure we could always
ask, yeah.
Ask it. He likes it.
Does everybody want to sort of ruminate on this for a month?
Adrian, do we get you emailed us this?
That was in the packet, so that's probably your easiest way to get it, otherwise it can get to it.
That works good.
All right, so we will look at this and come back with potential further edits for next month. Any other discussion on this in the room before I open up for public comment on this agenda item?
With that, like Woodrow mentioned earlier, maybe having them side by side or a red line kind of edit would be super convenient, but if not, maybe just, we could go through it together and be, okay, we're striking this, this is what we're adding, this is why, this is what this is, we're intending to function by this, you know. Or maybe we could go through it together line by line. And I apologize, I didn't see this in the packet, so I apologize for not seeing it, getting ahead of that.
Okay. So maybe next time have it up on the screen and we can just kind of work through it together that way. Is that what you're thinking?
We can bring printed copies.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can possibly try to, because I mean, this was composed on, 3 different computers, only one of which actually has Microsoft Word on it. So trying to get a proper red line copy is tricky. But yeah, I can try to have one of those at least available to throw up on the screen as we go through it.
This is already above and beyond, so you don't have to go too much, you know, but thank you very much for this work. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for putting your time into putting this together for us all.
Absolutely.
Well done, Adrian.
Great. Any public comment on this agenda item? Not hearing anything. So I think we will hand it over for staff communications.
All right. So currently the things that are going on right now within the planning division, the Main Street on Halsey code amendment went to Planning Commission last month. They confirmed staff's recommendation for denial to City Council with notes that they did like a couple of aspects, not the overall plan, which staff also agrees with, and directed staff to work with them in the future on a couple of things, primarily design standards for the Halsey corridor, which I think is also a great idea. So that's stuff that we'll be continuing to work on in the future for potential code amendment. Once we kind of get some stuff working with them, we'd also like to bring it, get people's feedback here as well. That code amendment, as is written, is the 2021 language from the, what was recommended by the consultants, Cascadia Partners. Staff, we did not go back through and try to update it to our current code. It's just as written. That's going to City Council on the 14th for introduction, and then the 28th for second reading and decision. Right now we also have one current application. The comment deadline just passed yesterday, and that's for an update to the cell tower that's down in the confluence area, I should say the water tower, the antennas. So we'll be writing that.
Sorry, just a point of clarification, this is not a separate tower, is it? It is the water tower that has cell antennas on it.
Yes,
Okay.
and so with that is, they're just updating the antennas, they're not adding any more, they're actually going to be removing more, they're updating it to, hasn't been updated in, I think the last case file on that was 2011 or something like that. So they're just updating it with the new material, better antennas. They're not going to be as large, and actually the city had asked them, which they are responding to move them off the tank itself and move them down onto the structure, where there's a couple other antennas. This one is for Verizon. There's already AT&T on there as well. So they're just moving them down to where the AT&T antennas are. So it's an expansion of a non-conforming use. Technically they're not expanding, they're not adding, but that's what it falls under. So that decision will be going out later on this month. That one's my current case file. I know last time I gave an update that we finally had full plans on the trail from the railroad. While we do have full plans, we are still waiting on one piece of information from their team. I guess a lot of them have been on vacation. We were trying to fast track that project so that we can get it done and start the development of it this summer, but we're still waiting. So once we get that last bit of information, to make sure that all the floodplain stuff is all good to go, they just need to make some edits to it, then the application will be immediately out. It was initially already sent out as a notice of application. However, upon review, there were several issues, especially with coming from the railroad. We weren't on the same page with them. So we withdrew the application as the city's application in order to come into compliance with everything they needed in order to move forward with the projects. We wouldn't have any hiccups with. Those are the large projects going on right now. I met with, in our planning meeting every Friday, we had discussed that planning staff, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here. We are planning on hosting a table at the First Friday event, and the point of that is to kind of be there for the public to come ask questions and answer questions, kind of a little more public outreach that way. Something that the planning director wanted me to bring to all of you is that the whole point of us being there is for community engagement. And, is there kind of a question that we would like to ask the public? Is there a question that you all think that we should be asking the public? What kind of, what modes of community engagement, how do they like to best receive the information, stuff like that. And then I can't remember if Erica spoke to you, but she was also recommended that if any members of this committee want to be there, that would also be helpful as well. That where they can kind of put a face to a name and know that, you know, they can contact you all if they have questions and bring it here. So that, I believe that's, the first one is on June 7th, right?
Yes, that's the first.
Yeah, the first Friday is on June
First
7th.
Friday.
First Friday, and that is when planning is planning on having it taken down there.
So there's not one on the 3rd?
I don't believe so. I believe it's June 7th is the first one.
It's rainy this weekend, anyhow.
So we will be having a meeting prior to that, so that's just kind of something to think about. You know, if you have any, how do you think, what's the best modes of getting information across? Any sort of question that you think we should be asking the public. And while we're there, we can ask them and kind of get some information from them as well.
Are you guys gonna have like a wheel or something, or how you?
Actually,
That's
Chris and Eric are kind of planning that, so.
Yeah, we do have, some swag, we have a little giveaway. But we're just gonna mostly have people just approach us and ask us questions and, talk about the wonderful work that you guys are doing, and other, committees are doing, and ask other people to participate as well. But if we could do whatever we want, I mean, director, is very open, so if anybody has a cool game or fun thing that they've seen recently, we can work together to implement that. No problem.
All ideas are welcome.
Yeah.
The goal of it is for community engagement, so.
Are you gonna have another one this summer?
I believe we're gonna try to
She's
get
been
it
working directly on it.
every first Friday, we want to have a table,
Oh,
so that the community can approach us when we talk about planning and community outreach.
One idea might be to ask people if they've visited our Facebook site.
Okay.
And the reason is, I hadn't looked at it for a while, and I was looking at it, and I saw how many times whoever is in charge of doing it was letting people know about the dog discussion that was going on at City Hall. And that was great. You had pictures of dogs, and it was multiple times. So I'm seeing how much information is being put on there, and that's just really good. It's a good way to get informed and know what's going on within the city. But by looking at the likes or whatever, it doesn't seem to be, a lot of people engage. I don't know if they don't know about it. A lot of people here, back in the day before they got that really rolling and looking great, a lot of people were going to a site called We Love Troutdale. And a lot of people are getting their information there, and I don't know how many people are following that. It was like 3,000 or something like that when it was in its heyday. And so I just don't know that people know that there's a Facebook presence. That's what they were using. I know that individual hasn't been posting things for the last few years since we've had the Troutdale Facebook site up and running. But it'd just be really nice to kind of accent that, and then what kind of things that they're able to view on that. And then I don't know if people know about Explore Troutdale. So I just don't know if everybody knows currently what forms of communication we do have out there. This might be something to inform them of.
Well,
And I guess to piggyback along that too, your question there, Dakota, I've done quite a few events where the goal is to get those eyeballs on your account, spooking the algorithm. So if there's any way with your giveaways, you can announce that, Instagram, Facebook, follow, like our most recent post and comment, and that way they'll pull to the top every time we get post something, they will see it because they've interacted 3 times on our account in a short period of time. So that should trigger Marley's stuff popping up if they go in, they follow us, like, and then maybe even comment. So I don't know if we want to go that far, maybe that's too much, but I played that game with business trying to get eyeballs, and that's how you do it.
That's really super easy to do. We've had a lot more effective and proactive marketing arrangement with the geofencing on Facebook. Are you familiar with that?
As far as the ads, targeted ads?
Geofencing is when anybody who comes into a certain area So Scouts does it with, women between 25 and, 55. If they come into the high school, geo-fenced area, then we're gonna send them a notice about one of our scouting events.
Interesting.
So if they are, and there's a few more algorithmic things that we check off, we're looking for moms.
Yeah.
And once we target moms that show up at the high school, then
That's your qualified
they'll-
prospect.
it's a prospect, and we start sending them some information.
So
And
maybe
anybody who
this,
hits downtown Troutdale should be getting notifications of our first Fridays and all the other stuff.
maybe this is just an initial discussion into what we're trying to take on.
Yeah.
And some of this may go into, hey, we do need a budget that they talk about, so we can pay for stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know?
And again, you look at the numbers, right, and you imagine that we're gonna, if we do something from a Troutdale perspective, we're gonna use a bigger net. So there would be a larger budget, but when we're looking for, moms visiting a high school, it's not a big number.
Yeah.
So,
Cool. It's gonna be a fun time.
I was just gonna suggest perhaps we could create some kind of question or line of thought around neighborhood associations or HOA. Would you be willing to sign up? Would you be willing to let the city know that your group or law so that we can, exactly what Woodrow just said, we could, geo-fence them,
Well, yeah, absolutely, because like I know, one of the things that has been kind of a complaint or suggestion, is as far as notifications of things that go out, right? Like the residents of the RV park, for example. When that one development was going in and nobody seemed to know what was going on, that would be like an association type group that could be a focus. Tenant groups of our various apartment blocks that we have, because they're not property owners. They don't get notifications of stuff, but they would probably like to. And that would, I'm sure, cover a lot of bases as far as numbers. And as an aside, the city Facebook group has just shy of 7,000 followers right now.
Almost half the population.
Except at least a third of those are probably Gresham residents, but.
Yeah. I don't know what you guys think, but it might be interesting to see if we could get a presentation on our current outreach strategies and what we're doing and what maybe we don't know about also that's happening.
it'd be nice.
Yeah, and I know that's one of the things that I think, going back to the language that I put together, part of the review touch point that I don't know how explicitly I said it there, but one of the things I was thinking about getting as part of the periodic review is some sort of presentation from staff saying, what is our communication strategy as a city? What are the metrics that we see as far as Facebook hits, website hits, emails that go out? How many of the tracking chips that we put in the Champion end up in the landfill? I'm kidding. But that kind of idea. So.
And maybe even as an idea for your booth is signing up for the Champion, because I don't get it because I'm in the RV park. And apparently, I was told that only a certain number of Champions are delivered to the RV park, and they've refused to put them into the mailboxes. So it's first come, first serve, whoever gets there can pick up a Champion. And I would really just like to have someone put a Champion in my mailbox and let me read it. So,
It's interesting.
We always have a couple.
I should probably just start making it a Tuesday morning, I'll go have coffee with you and then, call Twilight and harass her and.
Is there an online version of the Champion?
Yeah.
Boring.
Newspapers.
And it's in color.
One more thing, Chris, and I've seen in the past at the booths that seem to be very interactive. is when they've had something on like a whiteboard or like a poster board and then like a colored dot to go stick on the board as far as like an answer question to vote, or a, where do you think this should go, or where do you live, or, you know, like something like that, where people are doing like an interactive, putting something up there, they see other people participated, so they want to participate too. That was a fun one I've seen in the past.
You know, along those same lines, if we're gonna have multiple departments at the event, right? If there's gonna be planning and, you know, if there's gonna be Parks and Rec or other, Troutdale departments, there should be some type of ownership of questions. So if someone comes up to Parks and asks a question about public safety, right? Someone should be able to say, I'm gonna take you to that person and answer your question, and they walk them over, right? And instead of, oh, go over there, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like extreme ownership. And instead of, you know, letting them find and, go to a website or go do this, it's like, no, let me take you to the person who will answer your question right now. And granted, you can read the audience, because some people ask questions that they don't really want to know answers to. It's being difficult, but still, if there was a way to somehow get on the same page with the other tents or the other tables and just say, hey, we're gonna, buck stops here. Someone asks you a question, you take whoever, whatever citizen it is, you take them to the person that can answer the question, make sure there's a warm transition, and then, release them to get their answer. Just a thought. I have a few other questions too. All right, for the cell tower, is there gonna be any renovation or design changes to it when they're relocating the antennas?
As I am aware of, actually, I was informed of this through the applicant's narrative, not even through the city. But I guess they're working on repainting, the city is working on repainting it. And that's partially why they asked that they could move them lower. So that way they're not up around the tank, and the tank can still continue the feature that it is rather than the cell towers. I do believe I believe that's a question for Marley. But again, I can find out more about it. But I know Marley had mentioned that initially the city was working to remove all of them from the cell towers, or from the water tanks. The issue is that they're long contracts, and they're coming in now, so they're going to be approved. So I mean, they're going to have to move through. I think they're approved, I should say.
How long is that approval?
The contract.
I'm not sure about the contract. I know they're very long contracts.
Yeah, because we had just talked about just clearing it up and just making it like Edgefield has their water, just a feature, not, because I walk along the water there about, I don't know, once every other week or so, and it's sightly. It's not a pleasant thing to walk past. So we're gonna be having our trail, so that's why I'm interested in knowing how long this contract is.
I'm not entirely sure. I think the admin division might have more information on that. I don't even think it's City Hall. I think that'd be the question for Eric.
Because that's money that we're getting, correct? The city's getting, it no longer goes to the other owner. Okay.
Yeah. And that's why it's a expansion of non-conforming use, because when that was approved, that was okay there. Now, they're not, but it's still still an approval under their contract. Like if they wanted to go put a new antenna system in that area, it wouldn't be permitted use. So everything is now north of the highway. But since it was originally approved, they have that contract there. It's a legal non-conforming use in that sense. So I'm not sure exactly how long those contracts are.
Thank you.
Is the water tower lit? And I apologize, I should probably know this.
No.
Okay. So is there any opportunity or so there's a lot of electro equipment down at the base, right? Is that gonna be moving anytime soon, or?
As far as I know, with this application, they're not touching anything on the ground.
Okay.
If they were doing any sort of expansion on the ground, that would change what their application is.
Okay.
They're strictly replacing antennas with updated models.
And I don't know, Ms. Castillo, you may know, is any improvements to the water tower or something that's under the, I guess under city center, or was the town center? Yeah. Are they doing anything with that for development, or?
No, you mean besides proposing a cafe at the top of it?
Oh,
No,
did they?
we don't have any proposals right now.
Okay, all right, and
Remember that last one?
did someone really propose a cafe at the
No,
top?
no, it wasn't a cafe, it was a restaurant.
Okay, nice.
It's probably different.
So, again, you guys have heard me say this so many times, but, you know, I'm from Gilbert, and one of the focal points of that community in Arizona is our water tower. And it was an old railway water tower. I was married under it, and it has a splash pad, which of course we had to get that turned off to have the ceremony. I so wanted to be able to just turn it on, because that's how I am. And it does have a really cool anchor for the whole community. And they have lights, you know, the whole thing lights up different colors. You can petition to have it lit up for someone's birthday or favorite colors, and then they do all sorts of fun stuff for different events and fundraisers as well. But it really is a focal point of the community, and, you know, brings people together. And one of the reasons why I moved to Troutdale is because you had a water tower and museum. So, you do generate revenue for those contracts with the, how much roughly, do you know?
I have no idea.
All right.
Yeah, that's out of my realm of expertise.
All right.
That's budget.
And then who should I talk to at the town center about some of the things that Gilbert does with their water tower? How can I share that with somebody? Who would I share that with?
Say, come to the next TCAT meeting.
Yeah, town center.
Adrian, if you're gonna be there, I'll do my best. So, TK, all right.
It's the 16th.
That
It would
May
probably
16th
be-
sounds right, yeah.
And then 6 o'clock.
It would
Cool.
probably end up being as part of
Is it 6
something
p.m.?
like the development.
Well,
Whoever's doing
I
the
was
development.
just gonna say, my recollection of, I mean, I wasn't involved with them at the time, but my recollection of what I saw of a lot of the discussions around which developer we preferred was which ones used the water tower as a focal point of the development.
Exactly.
And so whatever development gets approved for down there, I mean, that is probably going to figure very highly in it.
Excellent.
Cause I don't see us going along with anything that doesn't.
That was a primary focus in the and why selecting the last developer for that location, and that's still going to be a high level of focus for any future development.
Beautiful.
Once we hear what Wood Partners comes up with in round 2, I'm sure that will be part of the feedback.
Excellent. And then next comment I had question was about the railroad plans. So if I remember correctly, the last discussion was something about the netting, is that right?
Yep.
Okay, so my concern is the size of the netting, I think, had to be smaller than what was originally proposed. Is this going to really make that a dark area? My concern is if there's gonna be a darkened area based upon the size and scope of the netting to protect the people underneath, it's just gonna make it dark and I guess not friendly, not safe. Because I don't think there was any plans to have any lighting in there. And so if we do make the safe, but then we make it so that it's gonna be shaded and dark and very dark, do we need to make sure we have some lights in there?
It is not, as I know of, supposed to be dark. It's still supposed to be mesh, see-through type thing. It's just supposed to be large enough netting to not allow things to penetrate. But it's not going to be like a typical tunnel, because that takes away from what the point of the trail is. So and it's something that the railroad has done several times I guess in other projects around the railroad, whenever they've had something like this. That's why they needed it, because they know it's proven. And so that's as far as I know.
Okay.
That one's not my project, so I'm not in the weeds as much there.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, the size of the netting is really just needs to be small enough to deflect or at the very least slow down like the ballast rocks and little bits of coal that might come off of.
So that could be a pretty small net.
It could be, but you're still talking like relatively, I mean, it's gonna be shaded certainly, but it's not gonna be as dark as what you would get underneath like one of those sun sail shades, like what they're talking about, what is in the budget for, Imagination Station. It's not gonna be that tight, so it'll be shaded certainly, I don't see it.
Will it be exfoliated? I mean, they're gonna take care of the vines and stuff so that, so then, because think about it, I mean, all it takes is 2 seasons and you can have a blackberry bush completely put that in darkness, right?
I'm not entirely sure. I believe that's part of parks for the maintenance of the trail.
Right. I just be very, very aware of how much light is under that railroad track. To the point where, I don't want somebody to think it's gonna be a nice place to take a nap or but yeah, light is good. All right.
Not that it matters, it's their prerogative, but I'll just point out the irony or hypocrisy, or at least interesting fact that the remainder of the bridge, including the other side of by Lewis and Clark, where thousands of people walk under there on a hot day, drive or boat, don't need it. But the new one, gotta have it. Anyway.
They're very happy.
All right. Very good, that's all I had, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other side of the bridge though is at Troutdale though, right?
What's that?
Yeah, technically, the other side of the river is not Troutdale's, not our problem.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it would be the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Any other communications?
Nope, that was it.
Great. Any comments online? Don't see anything. All right, we're gonna go ahead and move to committee comments. I'm gonna start with our members online. Kevin?
Even though I sound somewhat contentious, I do want to thank Adrian very much for the time that you took to put together that recap and the modification. I really do appreciate it. And I just, I guess it's just in my nature to challenge, so we get to the meat of the issue and the conclusion as quickly as is possible. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
I guess I would just say thank you everyone for a good meeting, and I apologize for I was going to be there in person, but just today was crazy, so I joined online, and I'll look forward to seeing you all next month.
Jenny?
Yeah, just thank you for a good meeting. Sorry, I had to be on the phone for a second, so I turned off my camera, but thank you.
Woodrow?
Great meeting, everybody. Thanks for your hard work and great discussion. Both of you two, thank you very much for all your help and everything you've done. I'm a grandpa, and I'm getting used to this now, I guess. So yeah, look me up on Facebook. I'll be hopefully, once my daughter gives me a permission to use the likeness of my grandchild. Is that a thing? I didn't know that she sent in a text message to everybody saying, wait till I give you permission to post this on social media, and I'm like, things change really fast, I don't know. So, she's gorgeous, she's perfect. And yeah, someday I'll be leaving to go visit her for a little while. Don't know when that's gonna be yet, but I'll let you guys know.
So let me just ask you a question, Dakota, on the Main Street's on Halsey. You guys recommended denial, but it's still going to council for their approval?
It has to.
Okay, so they could override you guys though, your decision.
They could. I don't see that happening. I don't foresee that happening.
Okay.
The reason why this still, to make a long story short, we were hoping we'd just do it at planning commission. The grant, the whole reason it has to go to city council is to close out. So that's really what we're trying to do. We've had multiple extensions. This was handed to me when I got here. It should have been done a long time ago and just gone, and denied initially. There's nothing that says we have to approve it. The other cities have, that's their prerogative. There's obviously things that we as a city didn't feel that were met. But there are some things that, from what we heard from planning commission, that could be useful to continue to look into, but just not as a full recommended code change.
Okay, so I wondered, I just wanted to understand that better.
Yeah, so that's why it's required. We have to go through and get a decision from council.
Okay, excellent.
Otherwise, we would have gone back. The planning commission kept working on things, but we have to go with this packet that was recommended from the Cascadia Partners.
Okay, all right, thank you. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Adrian, so much for putting that together. Really appreciate that. And thank the rest of you for all your input, and you guys online too. It's important that we have this good discussion, so I appreciate you all. So see you next month.
Victoria.
As we were talking, since I'm your town center representative, although we have plenty of other representatives here too. The meeting is May 16th at 7 o'clock here. And Wood's gonna present a new presentation since the other developer fell through because of the mall. So, if you have any questions and you can't make it, let me know, I'll ask. Because there's gonna be question and answer too. And thank you, Amy. That was very good. Thanks for doing that.
Great, Adrian.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody's candid feedback on the homework. Yeah, I look forward to seeing more feedback. If anybody has questions or on thought processes or specific language or whatever, and you want to just email me or something, or reach out to me before next month, feel free. I'm happy to discuss. But beyond that, good meeting and good discussion, and yeah, I always enjoy these things. It's good fun.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for everybody who helped create this meeting and prepare the work for it. Two questions first. I saw the sign is gone from the general store. What's going on there?
I have to think about that one.
There's people walking around in it doing stuff.
I believe we had a couple of business licenses come through and a couple of building permits they're doing. I believe it is a popcorn company that is going to be moving in there. So I know right now they're going through tenant improvements. There's either that one or I can't remember, there's another one. I can't remember, there's a lot that just came into downtown. So you're gonna be seeing a couple of, some of the vacancies kind of start filling up. We just had, I think, like 3 or 4 in the last couple of months. So they're going through the building permits right now. But I believe that's what it was. I think it's called Trailblazers Popcorn. They sell, so they're gonna have a storefront, they'll sell there. They also do fundraisers for schools and sporting events and stuff like that. So they kind of do a mixture of things, but they do have a storefront as well.
Okay, thank you. And then the Chinese restaurant, the for sale signs down. Do you know what's going on there?
That I have no idea.
No.
Nah.
Because I know my husband bought some Chinese food, and they said, because I noticed the sign was down, and they said they have to be out by the end of the year. So I'm assuming somebody purchased it?
That sounds familiar, that someone had purchased it. I haven't seen anything come in for any sort of change of use or anything with building. I know we had a couple calls of people wanting to do stuff with that back section, if they did rep by the restaurant. But yeah, not entirely sure.
Okay, Old City Hall, what is the update? That looks very, 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 very slow.
It's moving forward. It is slow. I believe there's still been a couple, just maybe a little bit more hand-holding.
Do they have full intentions of completing the project? I did see an ad saying, I was looking and I saw some publication about them opening up in the summer. I'm just concerned because of the way we put ourselves in fourth position in this wonderful opportunity of their purchase price. And I was cautious about us removing ourselves in case with this economy that people weren't able to achieve what they said they would achieve with it not coming back to us if that did not occur.
As far as I know, they still have every intention of opening. They're working diligently with the building division. The building division manager, Heather, has many, I think, a standing meeting every week, trying to help them get through the project. It's just, trying to make sure they do everything correctly. It's just taking a little bit more time. I know they were a bit delayed due to some funding issues early on, but that seems to have been ironed out. And so they are moving forward. They do have all their permits in and they are working. It's just taking them a little longer, speed bumps in the road. I can't speak to when they're going to be open. I haven't seen anything. That's more of a question for Heather, because she's working with them every single week. But as far as I know, they do have all their building permits in. They're either under review or they have some that are already issued. No finals that I know of have gone out for that building yet, because they're still just working with them. I believe it's Heather, our director, and the lead building examiners are in those meetings, working with the owners and developers of that, trying to make sure that they're moving forward and they're not getting a bunch of different things that here's what you need, and just kind of working through it step by step to help them get it completed.
Thank you. And then the last thing I have is, and I can't recall what our discussion was on it last time, but when we're talking about YouTube and retaining public meetings out in the city of Troutdale, I think Will brought up last time about East Metro not having all tapes, or I'm not sure how long we keep the tapes. So when you go to like the planning committee or whatever, and then you scroll how many years, I'm concerned as a part of public record that those videos should be preserved somehow, some way. And I don't know what our policy is on that, or if that's something that CAC can request, if that's something that we choose to take on to forward to council as a recommendation. Do you have any knowledge about how we?
I don't know how long, but I believe they remain up on YouTube. I've done, and even on our website, if you go back several years, I've used them for research on certain projects that I've worked on, specifically this Main Street on Halsey. I went back to 2018, or 2019, 2020, 2021, and looked at a lot of the work sessions with Planning Commission, so I had a better understanding of what's going on, because I had no idea of any of this long history when I was writing my staff reports. So they are all on our website still. If you go to, say, like Planning Commission, and you can go back, it takes you a little bit to wait for the page, and you click on it, and they still do pop up.
Okay, because we were looking for something like, that was 7 years ago, a specific one, and then it was just not available. So I'm just saying, as public record, like history, like when people need to go back and see how something occurred, or to learn, or to grow, or whatever, or find information. I just think it's really important that we do have that preserved. So, again, do you know who I would ask? What our policy is and how we are keeping those records?
I'm sure records retention is defined by code or law somewhere.
I'll find out, because I know we have obviously a public records policy, and it's
great.
usually a state requirements as well as our own in the city. We'll find out. I'm not exactly, I want to make sure I don't point you in the right direction of who it is, or we can ask them to get you the information. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I know, for example, I know more planning based on like the case files wise for public records. Those we have to keep, but as far as building, they don't keep building records past, I think it's 5 years or something like that, because they're not required to by the state. Planning, we are required to have record retention for historical knowledge as far back as the city was developed in some way, shape, or form. When I was working on a variance request, I was down looking at the microfiche from 2005 of old case files, digging through those. Which if you've never used a microfiche, it's painstaking. That's my first time ever doing. I'm used to going to a big archive room that has giant things and like pulling up the case files. So that's my first time doing microfiche. But I know that's for planning. We're required to keep all those files. As far as digital for public hearings and public meetings, that's something I'll have to ask and find the answer for you, because I'm not entirely sure. I've never had to deal with that person. So
Thank you.
I'll double check.
Appreciate that.
I want to say Sarah in City Hall, but I don't want to just say and then point you in the wrong direction. So I'll find out.
All right, thank you. And then one more thing. When we're talking about the Halsey corridor, I went to those meetings since the very beginning, and I went to for years. And I'm just saying that it's morphed into something that it just wasn't even discussed at the early town halls and meetings in the church in Wood Village. The question is, do they have any examples of, are they trying to mimic something that we could look at in any other part of Portland? Or, because I'm concerned, because like Division looks so bad. Stark, lots of parts going to Portland in Stark looks so, they just look, it just doesn't look like a pleasant road to be on or use.
From what go ahead.
So that's why I'm just asking, was this the first conception of this, of what they were trying to do? Because it looks like what they were just trying to do is build a whole bunch of apartments and take away cars. And then put up some signage that we said at the very beginning, we want to retain the ability to just do what Troutdale does, do it uniquely, do it well, involve Edgefield and let them have creative rights to their property, that we know that they're gonna do something amazing and cool and that will complement Troutdale. So, but is there anything out there?
As far as I know, this wasn't based on a study of other areas.
Okay.
This was based on a market study and then stakeholder feedback from what I've read.
Okay.
They're not basing it off of like another area or like, oh, this worked well in LA. They didn't do that. They did based on market study within the area. And for example, for the increased height that they were recommending, the reason why they're recommending that is we wanted to have mixed use. So, commercial on the street side with different setbacks in order to create more of a walkable area with different design standards for making sure it's not just a flat row for one full block of a building. You have to have dimensions to it. And then the reason why they increased the height is based on market study. Developers weren't building commercial because they don't get as much of a return on commercial as they do apartments. So that's why they recommended based on market study without going away and just doing apartments. To still get that mixed use commercial ground floor is to increase the height so it's more incentivizing to developers. From what I understand, that's where they did it based on full studies rather than of like looking at a specific location. And again, as you mentioned, it wasn't what worked for us. It might have worked for other areas for as far as the Free City approach, but it didn't work for us. That I am happy to do things in design standards to increase the kind of design that we have in downtown, out and along, to almost like expand that like feel and look of downtown is a good idea, and I think that's kind of from my interpretation, where planning commission's kind of like, hey, this could be good, I like how we have these dimension things. Maybe not all this, you get a credit if you go up and you remove parking type thing. That was a hard no, obviously. But some of these design standards that we can then have for this corridor would be, I think, a beneficial thing. I think that's where they want us to kind of start moving towards. Again, that'll be down the road when we write stuff. Well, I'd like to bring it here to get the public feedback, your feedback, bring it, talking to other people before we even bring it to work sessions with planning commission. Or after the first work session with planning commission, bringing it here and then having, what do you all think? This is what planning commission and staff has been looking at, feedback. What do you think about these kinds of design standards? I think our design standards for the downtown also use a little bit of, not a change, but just a little bit of tweaking here and there, just in order to really continue that feel all the way throughout that corridor. And I will say the Halsey corridor streetscapes, that's completely different. That's a subset of this. This is a different grant that was just for design and conceptual, finding the opportunity sites. And one thing that did come out of this was the town center plan. That was kind of done at the same time, so that's where the opportunity sites were identified. So there's been parts of the recommended Halsey, Main Streets on Halsey codes that have been implemented within the city, aka the town center plan, changing the names of some of our zones to mixed use, creating mixed use zones. We didn't have those before. So some pieces have been taken, and I think that's really the focus of moving forward after hopefully this gets denied at city council, because then we can just get rid of things we didn't want at all, and then use the pieces that we did and actually do something else with those pieces, like we already have. But yeah, so that's long story short. They didn't focus on one thing. They did it based on a market study, and I think that they're making the right move by kind of piecing out what we want as a city and then moving forward with those.
Thank you, that was very informational. I appreciate that.
I did a lot of research.
Good job. And it looks like you really care and you want something quality for our city, and I appreciate that.
Definitely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nothing that hasn't been said already. Again, thanks to Dakota and Chrisanne for your guys' support of us, and to the team here, everyone here and at home for being a part of this tonight. And lastly, in the many years I've been doing this off and on, it's not very often that somebody takes on a project, goes home, completes it, brings it back. Usually when it happens, it's the chair that usually does that. So again, just wanted to raise up and honor Adrian for that work, and shows his commitment to this team and to the city. So thanks again.
Well, thank you guys for being here and supporting us. Thank you, Adrian, for, I was thinking we were gonna get a tiny little paragraph, not 2.5 pages. So I can tell you, you really put a lot into this and thought it through, so appreciate that, and everybody's open discussion and everything. Just did want to do one short just update from the Public Safety Equity Group. We were talking in our last meeting about the HOPE team that does outreach with our houseless community, and there was some citizens that were concerned because of somebody out there on Frontage Road, and then also a little bit further down there on I-84 right on the highway, and they had been doing a lot of outreach with those two in particular individuals, and just it looks like those areas are cleaned up now, and hopefully they are in a safer location. So really happy that they're able to do that and support our community and keep people safe. So just wanted to call out that is taken care of. I know there was a lot of discussion in that in a few different groups. So all right, that's all I have. Thank you guys for the discussion and taking time out to come here and do this work. Anybody want to make
I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second it. I'll second it. Shelby Staffen.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye.